Ugh. So I watched the Family Guy movie, and in case you were like me and did not know the Family Guy even had a movie, that begs the question, is this an actual movie? No. And apparently, I'm not the only one who thinks this. Even the Family Guy writers don't even think this is an actual movie, yet it was promoted like one. Like, a hell of a lot. At least, I and the Family Guy writers do not consider it an actual movie. Not only is it a direct-to-DVD movie, but it's initially 3 episodes back-to-back that runs for an hour and a half long, making it a movie. And sure, I guess it could be a movie if you think about it that way, but literally the 3 episodes were released on Disney Plus and Hulu. Like, they're part of the show. You could literally watch the 3 episodes back to back, and that's the movie. And as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, that literally they made a joke on Family Guy about this not being a movie and how it's a big middle finger to the fans.
Like this movie, Stymie Gruffin, The Untold Story? It's not a movie at all, Brian. Just 3 episodes back to back. This thing is an insult.
Well, that might be overstating things a little.
It's a middle finger to the fans is what it is. I tell you, Fox should be in bed.
So, yes, enough with the freaking fluff in the beginning. The name of this movie is called Stewie Griffin, The Untold Story. And it's like, yeah, so Stewie is the star of this movie. So this movie, I mean, it is a movie, so I guess I'm gonna keep calling it a movie. So this movie was initially released in 2005 when they thought Family Guy was going to be canceled. So I was actually planning on doing a whole video about the whole cancellation and the final episode process, because I found it kind of interesting, and I don't think there's really been an actual video about that on here before. But basically, yes, Family Guy got canceled like twice, I think, and then it got revived each time. And initially, it was going to be canceled after season 3. Yeah, I think it was after season 3 it was originally supposed to be canceled. And so they had like a whole last episode planned out that they were initially going to do for like a big, I don't know, something to tie up loose ends. Even though Family Guy is not the show that cares about that. Like, Family Guy does not care. Like, they are so inconsistent. They do not care about plotline. It's all about gags and jokes, which obviously I love. I'm a Family Guy fan. Of course I love it. But it literally is not that. Again, I was planning on making this an actual video at some point on this channel because I found it kind of interesting how originally this movie was supposed to be a very long conclusion episode to the entire series where Stewie Griffin, the baby we all know and love, comes out as gay. That was supposed to be the ending to the entire show. It was supposed to be an episode called Queer is Stewie, and that was supposed to be the ending. But they initially decided to scrap that whole episode. Apparently they made it down to the script phase of that episode, but initially it was completely scrapped, and I think Seth MacFarlane said that it was scrapped because they wanted his sexuality to be kind of vague, not only because he's a baby, but for plot devices. So they're not limited to just gay plots with him. They can make him date girls, guys, whatever. So they kind of made him fluid. Yet they still make jokes about his sexuality to this day. I think there was a recent episode where they made jokes about it. It's a part of Family Guy, right? Yeah, so initially that was meant to be an episode. And they took a lot of that inspiration with Stewie come out as gay into this movie. And knowing that information about what the movie was initially supposed to be about, it was like, it's weird. Like, it's so, like, you can tell. Like, it's so uncanny when you watch this, now knowing that it was supposed to be Stewie's coming out episode. There are so many instances where it's like, yeah, like, you can tell that they scrapped that episode. And apparently, I do not have the DVD to the Stewie the Untold Story, but apparently, if you have the DVD, it basically says in the DVD that they basically talk about the entire script episode, and they might even leak the script. But yeah, so there was a lot initial coming up for this whole movie. And again, like I mentioned before, I do not have the actual DVD for this. And that's the only reason why this is considered a movie, because initially it was supposed to be in like one whole segment where they have an opener and a closer. And then, of course, the episodes in the middle. And of course, when you watch the actual episodes on Hulu or Disney Plus, it does not have those. But you can find them on YouTube, pretty sure. And there are some deleted scenes that, again, are not on streaming services, but they are in the DVD. So there are some perks to getting the DVD, I guess, but like most people don't have DVD players anymore. So now that I kind of talked about the development of this episode and kind of the history, or the movie, and the history behind it, I'm just gonna get started with the actual movie. Hope you guys enjoy.
Presents Stewie Griffin, The Untold Story.
So basically, it opens with like the Channel 5 news talking about the movie in like a fourth wall breaking way, which again is not like surprising. they break the wall way too many times in the show to the point where it's mind-boggling. So we basically see the Griffin family arriving at the premiere of their movie in a limousine. So even though they do break the wall a lot in Family Guy, I do kind of like how they keep their characters very consistent to how they are in the actual show. Because they joke a lot about how the Griffin family are basically like actors on a sitcom, essentially. And they had an entire episode kind of dedicated to the lore of this theory. And even though that may be the case, I do like how they, again, have the same names, they have the same personality, and they're all treated the same. So essentially, it's like Family Guy is like a reality show, I guess. We also see some celebrities at the premiere, like Drew Barrymore and David Bowie. Probably not the same voice actors, but like, it's something. So this part I couldn't get. Like, this part I couldn't find anywhere on the internet. So take this with a grain of salt because I read about this on Wikipedia. So I'm sorry I didn't have any clips of this. But apparently there was a scene where we see them all going into the theater and like seeing everything happen, seeing the movie begin to play. And then we kind of see a little segment with Quagmire or something, and I don't know. I don't think it's important, but that's something to note because that is in the DVD, but I couldn't find it anywhere online. So anyone who has the DVD, hit me up. So the official start to the movie is with the Griffin family at a community pool. And then Peter basically encourages Stewie to try to get into the water and learn how to swim, but Stewie is terrified of the water. So Lois brings up the idea about taking Stewie to get swim lessons. I always love how they make Stewie like he's an evil genius, and especially at this point in season 4, he is still very evil. He has a personality now, but he is still a very evil baby. And of course, he's a genius. He's like has an IQ higher than Albert Einstein. He is very smart. But I do like how they do remind us that he is still a baby, making him terrified about things like water. And the same also goes for Brian. Like how obviously he's a very smart talking dog, but he also has lots of views on things. He's a liberal, he's an alcoholic, he's a stoner, yet he loves a good chew toy. And so, last time I'll say this, but another reason why I don't consider this an actual movie is because they treat it like an exactly the same as a Family Guy episode. Like, there's the same cutaways, there's the same music, there's even a theme song, and there's even a different storyline for every half hour. The reason why the SpongeBob movie that came out in 2004, the same year as this, well, 1 year before, but whatever, the reason why that was so critically acclaimed was because it felt like an actual movie, because it had a different score, it had way better animation quality, and it was a theatrical release. This is why it's called Stewie the Untold Story, because it's really a story that doesn't need to be told. Like, basically, Peter's whole storyline in the first hour of, or the first half hour of this movie is basically him getting a job as a talk show guy on the Channel 5 News, basically with him having this segment called You Know What Grinds My Gears. I remember watching this part like when I was a kid or something, and this part for some reason just got grained in my head. Like every time someone says like, you know what really grinds my gears, I think of Peter. I just think I can't help it.
And that, people, is what grinds my gears. Tom?
Especially because my whole family has a very similar accent to Peter, and Lois too. Like my grandparents do, and that's definitely something they would say. Like my whole family's from New Jersey and New York, so they have a very similar Rhode Island accent, so it's pretty funny. And Peter's storyline does kind of connect with Stewie's at the end, but you know, it's nothing super important. So while Stewie's at swim practice, he's the one who's like sucking at swimming. He kind of sucks. And then he sees this one guy who's kind of like the star student of the group. So because Stewie is still evil, he decides to, I don't know when he had time to do this, but basically he planted a bomb or dynamite inside a lifeguard tower so it could explode and fall and crush the kid. But of course it kind of backfired and then it ended up falling on him. And this is when Stewie caught a glimpse of death and then he woke up in the depths of hell.
Hell? Now that's a bit much, don't you think?
I guess that's what happens when you try to kill your mother since the womb. So of course Stewie does survive this after his near-death experience, but he wakes up kind of a changed person because now he's terrified of like where he might end up when he dies. So he decides to, you know, become good. He decides to be a suck-up initially.
All these years I thought I was living in hell, but it gets so much worse. This is a sign. Well, from this day forward, Stuart Gilligan Griffin will be a good boy.
So in the next few scenes, we do see him kind of sucking up to Brian, and then Brian definitely sees through his facade, and he tries to prove that he is not actually changed. So Stewie suggests that he should start drinking because if he drinks, then he would be calm, and if he's calm, he would not be hateful.
Wait a minute. Of course, that's it. If I'm drunk, I'll be calm. If I'm calm, I'll be nice. And if I'm nice, I won't go to hell. Fix me a highball. I'm going to get good and tight.
But of course, Brian, being the reasonable one, says that he's an infant and there are better ways to deal with your problems than drinking. I like how Brian says that, yet he's like the alcoholic dog. I mean, this is probably before he really became an alcoholic dog, but like, it's funny knowing what happens later. Another reason why Brian is more of a father figure than Peter is to Stewie. And Brian is just like, it's too late for me now. Save yourself. So later, Brian finds Stewie drunk when he snuck some drinks, and then he decides to take Stewie to a bar to get him so incredibly drunk so he would never want to drink again. Yeah, forget what I said about Brian being a good father. Hey Brian, how's that son you never see? Dylan, his name? Dylan Flanagan? How's he doing?
Which isn't nearly as bad as your failure as a father. How's that son of yours you never see?
So, like, it would be enough seeing a literal infant get drunk at a bar who was already drunk to start with. Like, Stewie arrived at that bar already wasted for his little tiny 1-year-old body. But that's bad enough. But Brian getting drunk alongside with him, so they're both completely wasted. Like, completely wasted, not thinking rationally. So Brian gives the goddamn keys to Stewie while they're both completely wasted, and now 2 seconds later, Stewie crashes the car into the bar. So this is where the Peter storyline and the Stewie and Brian storyline connect. Because we see the news crew coming in and filming the incident about Stewie driving a car drunk, and then they connect the dots knowing that that kid is actually Peter's son. So then Peter gets fired from the news channel for being a neglectful father. Stewie then awakes the next morning with a massive headache and says that he is simply just an angry little boy and he is simply trying to find himself. Again, the first initial nod to his whole coming out segment being linked to this movie.
Well, I hope you learned something from all this.
I most certainly did, Brian. It seems I'm still finding myself.
So this is the first half hour of the movie, and yeah, I liked it. I liked it, which is kind of odd for me to say because neither storylines are very strong. Like both of these storylines kind of felt like B plots to me, but it was still entertaining at the least. And I do like the Peter storyline honestly, because again, the whole like you know what grinds my gears has been stuck in my head for like 10 years now. But I do like Lois and Peter in this episode because I love the fact that Lois is like a fangirl to Peter being on TV.
Stewie, don't interrupt. It grinds my gears when you do that.
Oh, he said it!
And I do find it oddly sweet how they were a cute couple in the beginning of the show. So the second episode, or second part, starts with the Griffins getting a new VCR because their last one broke. And then we see Stewie watching a news channel where he sees a man that looks an awfully like himself.
Oh my God, he looks just like me.
You know what? He does.
So Stewie believes that this is actually his real father.
He could be my father. My real father.
I like how he has like a deep, deep feeling that Peter ain't his real father. And honestly, I can't blame him. And I do find it funny because I do remember that they made like adoption jokes about pretty much like both of the kids, like Meg and Chris, a bunch of times. Again, consistency is not a thing in Family Guy for the most part because they have shown flashbacks of Lois giving birth to both Chris and Meg, but they made both jokes about them being adopted as well. I remember the first time they made a joke about Meg being adopted because they mentioned in court that Meg's real father's name is Stan Thompson. And Peter accidentally slipped one time saying that they found Chris's adoption papers. And I feel like Stewie is like the one, I mean, of course I could be wrong, there's a billion episodes of Family Guy. But again, I don't remember any initial times where they made jokes about Stewie being adopted because they showed flashbacks of when he was being born numerous times. So Stewie basically wants to go raise money to go to San Francisco, which is where his father is. So we see him crash a piggy bank and open a lemonade stand, but nothing goes well. He even tries to blackmail Brian into giving him money. Brian sincerely asks him why it's so hard to accept that Peter is his actual father, which I do appreciate early Brian, always being the voice of reason.
Stewie, why is it so hard to accept that Peter's your real father?
So just like the first part of this movie, this part also has a different storyline for Peter and Lois. And their storyline is pretty basic. It basically just consists of Peter and Lois wanting to get freaky, but Meg and Chris keeps crashing them. So Peter tries to talk to Meg about dating, and then Lois tries to talk to Chris about dating. So initially, hopefully they'll start dating and they'll be out of the house more. So back to the Stewie storyline. Quagmire has an RV that is going to California. So Stewie hitches a ride on the RV with Brian following so he doesn't get lost. So they later abandon Quagmire and then steal his RV with Stewie driving. Stewie is driving while Brian is in the back seat, sleeping. So Bro takes some pills, Stewie by the way, he takes pills while he's driving. So he ends up completely crashing the RV. I love how he was an alcoholic last part, and now Bro's a drug addict.
You took pills?
West Coast turnarounds! Trucker said to only take one, but I took all of them!
So after they crash, they walk into the desert on foot, and Stewie is naked for some reason. I don't know. I really don't know why he's naked. His diaper is also on his head, so that's something. He probably did that so he would be hydrated, but like ill. But Stewie finally breaks down, thinking that this whole thing is a stupid idea, to which Brian comforts him and says that they made it this far and he must see it to the end.
Come on, I'll stick by you the whole way, just like I did when we were Siamese twins.
And he does promise to stick with Stewie the whole time. Again, season 4 Brian is elite. So at the end of the part, the second half hour, at the end of the half hour, Stewie then finds his real father. the man he's been looking for. And then Stewie straight away calls him his father and then hugs him. To which the man says that he is not his father, but he's actually himself in 30 years.
Oh, Daddy, I knew I'd find you. I knew Peter couldn't be my real father. No, you've got it all wrong, Stewie. Stewie? How do you know my name? Because I'm not your father. I'm you.
And so that's how the second part ends, which I will say is actually a pretty good end, like a pretty good twist to a Family Guy episode, especially since I think this was before Stewie actually built his time machine. I could be wrong about that, but I think this was before time travel was an actual thing in Family Guy. So yeah, I actually really like this part. I actually might like it than the first one. I like how it has a consistent storyline, but it also does not feel dragged out. And I do like how the B-plot was exactly that. It was a B-plot. And a good one at that. Yes, it was simple, but it was oddly compelling. It's honestly nice, as I mentioned before, seeing Peter and Lois actually care for one another for once. As well as their kids. And the same can go for Stewie and Brian. I do like how Brian was disagreeing on Stewie for a lot of things, but he did initially follow along with him, mainly because he knew it was important to Stewie. And that's another thing. Stewie. Stewie was absolutely ruthless in this episode, dude. I kind of skimmed over this because it wasn't big for the plot at all, but this is the Stewie that I know and love. Like, I wasn't a fan of season 1 Stewie because I feel like he was so one-dimensional. Like, his entire thing was just being like an evil, evil baby to the point where he had no other personality. He was just talking gibberish. Like, his only main motive was to kill Lois for no real reason at the beginning. And I do find it kind of played out for me. Like, it got old quick. And now in the show, season 22 Stewie is, his main characteristic is being a gay porn star. But this Stewie is perfect. He is still savage, yet evil, but he has personality now, outside of that. Like, he has other wants and desires, besides wanting to spread his evilness. He wants to find himself, which I find great. So in the final part, we see older Stewie talking to younger Stewie talking to older Stewie about the future. But older Stewie refusing to talk about the future because it could definitely alter the past.
You can't just leave me. I must know my future. Sorry, it's against the rules. Goodbye, Stewie.
So he flashes back home while younger Stewie latches onto him, taking him to the future with him. And younger Stewie was definitely like a little disappointed when he finds out that older Stewie no longer has a quest for evil and he has a relatively normal life. He is actually kind now, but he does live in a crappy apartment and works in a minimum wage job and is also a 30-year-old virgin.
All right, that's it! I could handle the crappy apartment and the pedestrian job, but now you're telling me I'm a 35-year-old Parade magazine reading virgin? Well, you, sir, are pathetic!
A life younger Stewie can never see for himself. So both of the Stewies... Okay, I'm just gonna call younger Stewie, the Stewie that we know, Stewie, and the older Stewie, Stu, because that's what they call him in this movie. So Stu and Stewie go to their parents' house, who, of course, are 30 years older as well.
Oh, Stu, my big boy.
Hello, Mother. She's still alive?
Peter and Lois are surprisingly still married. Did not see that one coming. Chris is a police officer married to a very, very horrible woman who is also kind of a stripper, I think.
Sorry, we're late.
Stop apologizing. You sound like a woman.
Oh, I suppose one of you has to.
And Meg, who now went through a sex change operation and now goes by the name of Ron. We also see that Stewie, of course, has died at this point, and he was buried in the backyard, but then Stewie kind of laughs at this, and then he writes douchebag on Brian's gravestone, which is honestly so funny to see Stewie's reaction to Brian actually dying in season 12. So Stewie vows to make Stu's life much better by fixing up his apartment and trying to teach him about sex, which all ends in disaster.
I'm sorry, that's never happened to me before.
Which part? The 8 seconds of sex or the 40 minutes of crying?
Everything gets worse with Stu getting fired and his apartment catching on fire. So Stu tells Stewie that his life has always been a disaster and basically has always been messed up since that near-death experience that happened to him when he was 1, which we saw in the first half hour of this movie. He mentioned when he was about 20 years old, he started experiencing nightmares about the situation. And his therapist has told him that he was dealing with some very complex repressed emotions that may have caused him to take fewer risks when he got older. So Stewie plans to go back to the past in the community pool to stop the near-death experience from happening. And as I mentioned before, I do honestly love how they connected the first part to the second part, or the first part to the final part of this, because I was thinking in my head, like, why is this even a thing? What did the first part have to do with anything? But again, I am glad that they connected it somehow. So Stewie gets Stu's time travel watch so he could travel to before he gets crushed by the lifeguard tower, which he does end up successfully doing.
Don't press that! Future 35-year-old virgin! Fran! What the devil? Yes, I did it! I stopped the tower from falling!
Then younger Stewie literally, like, evaporates the current Stewie. I know, this is confusing. So, like, what? What? So the Stewie that we saw in the adventure dies initially. Like, what? If that Stewie's gone, then shouldn't all the Stewies be gone? What? So that means the first episode never happened? So because of that near-death experience, that means that Stewie never became a drunk? Peter never got fired from the news anchor? Is everything a lie? Also, I legit don't remember what happened to Brian. like, he said he would be with Stewie the entire time, but he literally just vanished out of nowhere throughout this episode. And I don't remember when it happened. Like, he wasn't in the third act at all. Okay, stand by while I rewind. Okay, so Brian's literally last scene is when Stewie told them to split up so they could go find Stu in the second part.
All right, let's split up and try to find him.
And that's it. He was never seen again. So is he lost in the future forever? Like, what? I guess. I don't know. So there is this extended scene. Again, I couldn't see all the extended scenes, but there was this extended scene that is only in the DVD pack that I was able to learn about. So basically, they need money to afford the time travel watch to send Stewie back to the past. But Stu basically asked older Lois for a loan for the time travel watch, and then Lois said that she would do it on one condition, and that one condition was if he goes back in time to Chris and that girl's wedding and then kills the girl. And of course, it's Stewie, so he does it. Like, he does not care, he does it.
And if anyone has any objection to this union of Chris and Vanessa, let them speak now or forever hold their peace.
I do.
So the movie officially ends with, like, the real time at the premiere, just like how the beginning was. And then Trisha Takanawa, the news lady, asked people what they think about the movie, and basically getting completely negative reviews. So after this, Trisha asked the family what they did during their cancellation between season 3 and 4. So Peter talks about how he did a bunch of part-time jobs that involve wearing costumes, although he wound up being fired because he kept peeing in the costumes. I don't know. Brian talked about that he competed in a dog race, only to get very tired and lose. Okay. Lois then talks about how she became a prostitute. And then Meg talks about how she sung for U.S. Navy veterans. And then Chris talks about how he was, like, a guest star on a few shows. And the same goes with Stewie. He was just part of talk shows. So in the end, during the final speech, Peter just makes a little speech talking about being back. Nothing really, crazy about this part. So yeah, my initial review about this movie is that it ain't a movie. But I do find it crazy how it's like promoted as one. And I definitely do wish that Family Guy had an initial movie that they released to theaters. Like how one of the Road 2 episodes, like the best episodes in the entire show, episodes like Road to the Multiverse, which is one of the best episodes in the entire show. Not just me, the entire fandom thinks that, and it's Seth MacFarlane's favorite episode. Like, if they made something like that into a movie, that would have been so cool. And again, now that I again talked about the beginning, how this was initially supposed to be Stewie's coming out episode, I'll point out a few moments which makes it very clear that it was supposed to be. Because we see in the first part, Stewie talks about how he's still finding himself.
Well, I hope you learned something from all this.
I most certainly did, Brian. It seems I'm still finding myself.
And then in the last part, we see Stu talk to Stewie about how he had a lot of repressed emotions he was bottling up, mainly because of a near-death experience.
And then my therapist said I've been suppressing some very complex emotions that may well have caused me to take fewer risks.
And of course, lots of Christians who end up becoming gay get scared because, of course, they always have the fear that they're going to hell when they die. So Stewie having a near-death experience and then seeing hell was probably pretty traumatizing for him. And then, of course, seeing himself as a 30-year-old virgin who refused to have sex with both women and men. It honestly makes a lot of sense. And we also see Stu have a lot of gay stereotypes in his character, like how we see him being interested in like fashion magazines and female products, and we see him only being friends with girls, and also just the way he talked, like he had a certain inflection in his voice.
Oh, are these the pictures from your trip to Sonoma? Oh my God! Oh, look how beautiful the countryside is. Oh, I would love to get a house out there if I had the money.
And of course, the most obvious one of all, of course, him not understanding or wanting sex whatsoever with a woman, to the point where when he's forced to do it, he ends up crying the entire time.
Let's have sex! What?
Definitely. I'll be right back.
What the hell is wrong with you? I can't do this. I can't go through with this. Why? Why the hell not? I'm too nervous.
I'm getting my diaphragm.
See, I don't even know what that is.
So my advice, if you want to watch this movie, if you want to have a Family Guy binge, watch the episodes Stewie Be Good in Season 4, Bango Was His Name-O, and Stu and Stewie's Excellent Adventure. That's the movie. Sure, you won't get the bonus scenes in the intro, but it's the basic plot. Well, I hope you guys enjoy this little talk, because I'm happy that I at least understand this now. Because for the longest time, I've always been hearing like, oh my god, Stewie, the untold story, and I'm like, what is that? Like, I never understood it, because I've seen these episodes before. I've seen pretty much every episode of Family Guy. I've seen this before. I just like did not know it was part of a movie. Like I did not know that Stewie Be Good was correlating to Stu and Stu's Excellent Adventure. I had no clue. Now I do. Well, hope you guys enjoy this video. It's a lot. It's a lot. Make sure you like and subscribe for more Family Guy content, and of course check out my other playlists. I have a bunch of playlists that you could check out on my channel. If anything interests you, please let me know. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!